so many daily stand-ups and just ritualistic meetings that are there. They're like zombie meetings, like every single week.
Yes.
Every single week, people have like 5 of these meetings or 10 of these meetings. And you notice it that people go to these meetings. No one is really listening to what each other is saying because it's not really connected. Everyone is
Yeah.
just sort of like saying their thing and then just like going their way.
Fernando, let's talk about DevEx today. Now, an awful lot of people in software engineering don't really know what that means.
It's about how developers feel about their work and essentially what makes them happy, right? For me, I prefer to define what great developer experience is. And for me, great developer experience is how easy it is for developers to get into the flow at work, to get into a flow state. If you have everything in place, so it is very easy for you to get into the flow state whenever you have to do something, then that is good developer experience for me. And when I mean that, I don't mean that all developers need to be in the flow at all times, because sometimes people misunderstand me when I say that. They think, oh, you just want developers to be constantly coding, not talking to anyone and no meetings or nothing. No, that's not what I mean. What I mean is that, if you have to do something, it's easy for you to get into that state and it's easy for you to maintain it. That would be my definition of it. And when you look online, I think people talk about flow state as a part of developer experience, but they don't particularly mention it as the focus of it. But for me, I feel like whenever you change a lot of things about developer experiences, everything tends to get back to this particular thing. And I feel like if you optimize for this, for flow state, everything else just falls into place.
Okay. And what are the ways that you think that we should be optimizing for that flow state?
It really depends, because there's so many things that you can optimize in order for you to get into the flow, right? I mean, I was talking to someone who worked at Google, and they told me that the way that Google designed their offices initially, all of the things that they were doing that people said, oh, they're being so extravagant, wasting so much money on their developers, like they get you free food, they wash your clothes, they give you massages, you have like these nap pods, and you have like these really nicely designed offices, etc., etc., etc. All of that leads to developers staying more at the office and working more and getting more into the flow of things, right? Because if you have to work and then you have to worry about a lot of things about your life, it's a lot less likely that you're gonna get into the flow of things. Some people may say that it's a bit manipulative that you're doing that, but in a way, I think it does work. If you're gonna have an office, if you're gonna force people to come to the office, doing things like structuring your office in a way where people can get into that flow state is much better for productivity in the long run. If people can get into that flow, they're gonna develop more and better code for you. And I think that Google did that quite well. I'm not sure if they had a lot of open offices and stuff, but I think a lot of companies did a lot of open offices. I don't think that open offices are particularly good for this because they cause a lot of distraction. But yeah, and then there are other there are many other elements that lead to flow state as well, right? Like, for example, I don't think people talk enough about tooling, because tooling is quite important as well. Like, depends on what tools you use and how they're structured and everything. If it's easy for you to use the tools that lead you to do your job efficiently, then that also helps that. So there are many elements that would help you to get into flow state. I mean, those are just some examples.
Yeah, I can relate to the office one. I've never worked for Google, but back in 2000, gosh, that long ago, I worked for Compaq before they ceased to exist, and they had an office in Reading in the UK, and they had a central street down the middle of this massive office building that had a travel agent, a bank, a couple of coffee shops, a library, And it did mean that having travelled all the way to the office, you didn't need to leave. And that took a lot of stress out of it because, again, in those days we were all in the office, banks were shut at the weekends. It took a lot of stress away and it made you be in that flow state knowing that at lunchtime or when I have a coffee break, I can just pop into the bank, pay this check in, deal with that bit of admin. I can pop out. I've got to do some work later travel. I can pop out and sort out stuff at the travel agent because, again, in those days you needed foreign currency or traveller's checks. It wasn't as easy to use a credit card overseas. So that removed a lot of the friction and made it a lot easier to be in the office, think about things, not trying to rush off early. And again, internet was a lot less prevalent there and a lot less useful. So having a massive library on site was, again, so incredibly useful. What about the tooling then? What is the tooling that really stands out for you as being incredibly useful to keep a developer in that flow state?
I mean, whatever works for you best. For me, like I would summarize it in this way: whatever allows you to do whatever you need to do in the least number of steps. Like if in order for you to start your job, to start your work, to get to do your work, you can do it in 0 steps, that's the most ideal tool that you can use. So, and obviously if it's like scalable as well, right? But I like to I tend to favor myself tools that have very good user experience. If a tool is very easy to use and is intuitive and it doesn't require you to spend a lot of time like trying to learn it so just so you can do your job. Of course there are exceptions for this, right? Like there are people that love to use Emacs and they like to use Vim, which is not exactly intuitive, but once you learn it and you get good at it, it accelerates you, and people really love these tools, right? But then there are other tooling that is more like circumstantial, right? Like infrastructure tooling and things like that, that you just need to do here and there. And sometimes those are the tools that you want to design in a way where things are very easy for your developers to get going. And I think this was the main appeal, the big appeal of platform engineering as well. They were talking about, like create these platforms where developers can just go ahead and start like, get all the infrastructure needs served, and they don't have to worry about any of that. That's the dream, right? I mean, whether that dream is often delivered, that's a different story.
So in a way, if I may, I could compare it to getting in a car. You want it really, really simple to start your car. There's a big button that says start that you just push and it starts. You don't have to worry about all the kind of complex details of how the engine works and cranking it and getting any fuel in. Just push the button and go. So you think the tooling should be like that?
I think, yes, exactly. I mean, engineers love tinkering with things, and it's good to have things that are customizable. But when that is, especially when that thing is not your particular domain, like if you are a developer and you want to create an API or whatever, you may not really care about like infrastructure at all. So if you have to learn lots about infrastructure, that's just a frustrating experience for you. So you need to learn what the correct abstraction layers are for the people using your platform or the people working at your place. If you have like too many things that create a lot of steps for people to actually get their work done, then that's where the flow breaks. And that could take, I mean, tooling is one that is quite common. I see it quite often, like places that people waste a lot of time on that. But then there's also like processes, there's like bureaucracy, there's so many things. I feel like there's just so many things that you can optimize to get better flow state, and even things that you wouldn't think of. Like you are underpaying your developers, and if you are underpaying your developers, then they may start think a lot about looking for another job, and then they are not concentrating at the work that they're doing. So like this, it's all these little things that contribute to it.
Cool. Yeah, so I'll pick up a couple of things. And you mentioned with tools, the user experience. I think one thing that's very easy to forget there is how quick things work. So let me give you an example there. In the last 7 or 8 years, I've done quite a lot of Python, and I come from a background of C++, so having static type checking has been great. Python obviously doesn't have that, being dynamic typed. But there are tools like MyPy and type hints that's been added to the language, so you can now add type hints and use MyPy and analyze it, which is great. Big step forward in tooling. However, as you get a larger project, MyPy isn't very fast. And I'm lazy stroke, like to automate things, remove the friction. So static analysis of my code was automated in a pre-commit hook, so I didn't have to think about it. Every time I did a commit, it was automatically run. That starts to become a friction when it takes more than a second or so to analyze the code. And it didn't take long for that analysis to be taking a minute. That just adds a bit of friction. Every time you're going to commit, it's going to cause a 1 minute delay. That's the kind of thing that I think is a horrible UX that we forget.
Yes.
There's no UI in there. There's no GUI to it or anything, and the execution of the thing is automatic. And I think this is where actually Rust has been great for Python. A lot of these tools have now been rewritten, and we've got things like UV, LUF, and all these other tools have been converted to Rust, and are now blindingly fast and back to running in milliseconds. And that's fantastic, and has really improved the UX of that. And I think probably in the area of C++, which I didn't like at the time, for quite often building things was quite horrible, but I believe the make tools and environments around that have improved, and then Go and Rust have their own tooling like Cargo that's incredibly useful. So tooling can make a huge difference to that user experience. Interesting you mentioned pay there as well, because I was thinking about there's that and there's the environment you create in the office. I spoke to a HR person several years ago who was talking to me about the problems they have in a software engineering team and saying that their turnover was much higher than they wanted and it was costing them a fortune. And one of their engineers just suggested they buy them all a decent chair. And one manager was horrified at the idea of spending £1,000 a chair on comfy chairs for the team. Another went for it, and it just instantly dropped their turnover.
Oh, really?
And I think I don't think it was as much about the chairs necessarily, but it was showing that they were starting to think about the developer experience, showing that it was starting to care about the productivity of their team. And I've had a similar experience myself. I joined a company in 2016, and I couldn't believe it walking into the offices in London, financial company, and seeing all of the developers still working on a single 14-inch monitor in 2016. The inefficiency of somebody working in that environment trying to code on a single tiny monitor was unbelievable. Again, buying 20-inch monitors for people made a huge difference to productivity of that team. And again, it's a very, very cheap investment in removing some of that friction, letting people get into that flow state, getting them be able to see enough of the code and documentation that they can work efficiently.
It's funny about the hardware, the tooling that you give employees. When I used to work in offices where you didn't get you got like Windows laptops like Lenovo, Dell, and that sort of thing, and everyone always left the laptop at the office when they went home. And then I worked at offices where they gave Macs, and everyone takes a Mac to their house. It does make quite a difference, And I think a lot of a few of these luxuries as well. Luxuries, like I'm gonna quote that because it's not really a luxury because it helps you do your job, but they have become sort of normalized. I don't know if you're active on LinkedIn, so you saw that post of this guy who rejected a job because they gave him a Windows laptop, and I'm like, yeah, I can see that. I can totally see that happening. So yeah, I mean, it is about feeling like the company cares about you. That does help a lot, because if you're at a place and you have a lot of resentment, it's a lot harder to care, a lot harder to concentrate. There's a lot of things that go into that, right? And I think maybe you're a company that cannot afford it. Maybe you're a charity, or maybe you cannot afford these things. But as long as your employees know that you care and that you don't offer it because you can't, they're okay with that. I think they can make that. They can feel okay with this, right? they can accept it. But it's the problem when it's not justified that it feels that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's also a problem if you're pushing them to be more productive, continually trying to emphasize how, yeah, again, this wasn't a great company, but they were very, very critical as engineers, very emphasizing that they weren't delivering. And as an outsider coming to that, I was like, hang on, you need to be creating psychological safety. You need to be creating the environment for them to thrive. Continually beating down people, putting them down, giving them a negative work environment, you're just going to drive productivity through the floor. And sure enough, it just kept falling until some of these things started to change. Okay, so let's move on and be much more positive. We've kind of touched on some of the downsides of that, but why do you think that developer experience is so important? What's the benefit that a company's going to see from investing in it?
Well, if your developers can get to work straight away and into the flow and writing code for you and enjoying it, they are going to deliver more value for you, more quality. So it's a bit like the theory of constraints, right? Like you're basically, I mean, developers are your, in a way, they're your ultimate bottleneck, right? If they're the ones creating the code for your company and they're not able to deliver code for you, then you're not advancing. So that fundamentally is the most selfish reason that you can possibly imagine. I mean, I'm not even gonna touch, oh yeah, like care about your employees, treat them with love, because ultimately companies, well, individuals too, they're selfish in a way, like everyone wants to, like, employees wants to make money, companies want to make money, they want to, and I feel like there is a definite value to create that environment for employees. It's not just being a better company, being a better person, or that sort of thing. So
Yeah, and it makes sense. And I think you're right. We've got to be realistic. The company is not there to. It's not there to be our family. It's not there to be, our therapist. A business exists to make a profit and to create some value. Now, ideally, as employees, we share in that value, so we get a fair salary for the work we do. But it maximizes that value if it gets the maximum out of the things that are the inputs. So, that's our time, our knowledge, our experience. So if it can leverage those most efficiently, we get job satisfaction as software engineers, the company gets the best output. So it's a win-win, and the company's more profitable, can hopefully afford to pay us more, can stay in business and continue to pay us. So we should view it as a synergistic relationship where, everybody wins from us doing this.
yeah, and I think companies can even be strategic about how they offer these benefits that are focused on delivering flow state for your employees. Like developers, engineers, even other people that work in other jobs, right? I think one example is like doing expenses. How some companies, they have these Excel sheets and they send you these Excel sheets that you have to fill in, and there's this big process that you have to go through in order to for an expense. It's like, why can't you just reduce the number of steps? Like if someone is spending like an hour of their job just to fill in this, you're actually you're wasting people's time and you're wasting companies' money. I don't know if some companies doing to dissuade people to do it all together, so maybe they don't have to like pay for that. Maybe, I mean, you can think of it that way, but I feel like companies can be smart about this, right? Like for example, you can offer a benefit working from home. Some people work much better from home, and some people live very far away. They don't want to spend like 3 hours a day to go to the office because it drains them, and then they don't deliver as good of a work. It's a benefit that is pretty much free to you, or even cheaper than free, because you don't have to pay stuff for the office, right?
Yep.
And yeah, I mean, these are just benefits that you can offer to your employees where they're happy, but it also serves some advantage to you, right? So I'm actually quite partial to companies doing things like this that benefits both parties. It doesn't have to be like a frivolous benefit that that doesn't benefit either that only benefits one person, right? Yeah. So for me, that's something that companies should focus on.
Yeah, absolutely. What about, though, as we're talking a little bit about the company here, what about within the team? What are your
Or
views on a team focusing on developer experience and their developer experience in particular?
yeah, so a team focusing on their own developer experience is about how they organize and how they communicate with each other and how they package their work so that other members of the team can consume it in an easy way. So, for example, if well, my background is infrastructure, right? If I create some infrastructure code or whatever, and I do it in a very messy way, in a way that I'm not at the office, and it's very difficult to understand what's that and how it works and all of that. If I don't package it in a way that my colleagues can easily consume it, then I am affecting the developer experience of my colleagues in a negative way. I mean, I think this is why it's important that you also have good documentation, and it's getting easier and easier now with AI, right? Like to document and do all these things. People still don't do it for some reason, but it's just getting easier and easier. But I think code quality is also another one as well. I think you should write your code so it's easy to change down the line, so it's easy to read, that sort of thing. I mean, everyone can contribute to the overall developer experience of a team or a company. And but I feel like this is all about the focus as well, right? I've worked in many companies, and most companies don't have this focus. You would be amazed. Like a lot of people go, they do a job, they get it to work, and then they just drop it like a hot potato. And sometimes you can look at the code and you can see all the parts that they were, all the things that they were trying. Oh, they tried this first, then they tried that, then they tried this and try. And it's such a headache trying to understand that, because you see all these things that are not necessary for the repository to work, but they're still there, and they're sort of like the history of this person trying to do all of these things and then not cleaning afterwards, or adding lots of comments of code that is not used anymore instead of deleting it. Like, I mean, you have version control, you don't need to keep so many comments, and that sort of thing. Like applying a bit of Marie Kondo to the way you do things, I think is quite useful.
So I absolutely agree. And I think one of the things that so many teams miss is thinking about their own developer experience. Most or too many teams I come across don't have a regular retrospective. Or if they have a retrospective, they do some form of agile retrospective game, and it's not a very productive meeting. And most software engineers, we hate meetings, so
Yep.
I don't understand why they have one that's unproductive and they don't fix it. I like to focus on a retrospective as being our opportunity as a team to say, well, what is working? What isn't working? If stuff's working, do we want to do more of it? Can we do more of it? And if stuff isn't working, how do we stop doing it? How do we get rid of it? How do we stop making it a pain? And we should come out of that meeting with one or two actions that we've agreed are the most important actions we're going to take this week or this sprint or whatever kind of iteration speed cycle that you're working to, and say, like, this is the top one or two things that we are going to do or stop doing because they will improve our experience as a team. And they might be something as simple as we're going to use pre-commit hooks to always run this format on our code, because that removes some friction from the code review process. Or they might be something as, when you need a code review, we're going to put a message in this Slack channel. Or they could be much bigger, as we're going to switch to yours using this pattern, solution, tool, technology, process, whatever. But there should be something that is coming out of that retrospective every time you do it. That's something we're going to do that's going to improve our team by 1%, 0.5%, improve our lives, because we'll stop doing something that sucks, or we'll start doing something we think would be better, and we can course correct. But I just don't see that many teams really doing that. What do you think we can do to improve that so that more teams have that retrospective and think about improving their lives on a regular cadence?
It's funny because people sometimes think that I hate meetings, and I do attack meetings a lot on LinkedIn, and this is because I worked in so many places where meetings are so badly done, and I think most places do meetings really badly. And I feel like when you go to a really good meeting, it's electrifying. It's like you said, like you go to a good retro, and then you talk about the things that were on, and then you have like you have a good discussion, and then you have like some an outline of the things that you need to do next. It works really well when it is like that, right? Especially when all the participants contribute and they are active participants. But you have like so many daily stand-ups and just ritualistic meetings that are there. They're like zombie meetings, like
Yes.
every single week people have like 5 of these meetings or 10 of these meetings. And you notice it that people go to these meetings, no one is really listening to what each other is saying because it's not really connected. Everyone is
Yeah.
just sort of like saying their thing and then just like going their way. And then people justify it because like, oh, like, yeah, this one meeting was really useful because actually something happened in this meeting is 1 out of 25. It's like, yeah, even a stop clock is right twice a day. And then other people defend them because they say like the two things that people defend daily standards about. And sorry, I'm going on a branch from the question that you asked me.
Okay, let's
But
go for it.
two of the things that people usually defend them. One of them is like they say it builds the culture. But I'm saying, I mean, daily stand-ups is the wrong place to build a culture, right? Because you just go there, you say your thing, no one really chats about anything. If you want to do that, just have a meeting to chat shit in that meeting. Like just have a meeting for socializing. If
Yep.
you're gonna do that, right? The other one is is because you don't do this, then people will not do their job, right? They will. It's because you have to watch that people are doing their job every day, because then they will not do it. And it's like, man, I think you're at that stage where you need to micromanage people with daily stand-ups. You already done the hiring round. You have like the organization has many other issues that you need to fix. But I think it's kind of like a borderline religious thing, like from Scrum, that we have to have these meetings, so we have to do them every single day. And then one of them sometimes is the retro, and these retros are usually like not as useful as what you described right there. Because
Yeah.
if you had actually maybe just one meeting a week or whatever, or ad hoc meetings as well, that works really well, because then there is like a definite purpose for that meeting. And don't invite the entire company to that meeting, just invite the relevant people. Then if you need to sort of summarize for other people, then do it. But not everyone needs to be there, especially if they don't need to talk in that meeting. But what was the question? Sorry, the question was the question how what was the question?
Let's forget the question because I want to pull at the stand-up thread. So I'm a big fan of a daily stand-up. I like to have one.
Oh, sorry. And here I was like smashing it, stabbing at it. You're like a lover of stand-ups.
Well, no, there's a big but that goes with my love of stand-ups. I love stand-ups because they're a chance for the team to synchronize every day. And the but with that is my assumption with a stand-up being a useful meeting and something we should do every day is that we are running close to an extreme programming approach, that all of our tasks are estimated to a day or less, and that we are genuinely working as a team and probably doing some form of pair programming. So at that point, it is very useful when the people are genuinely working as a team to say, hey, me and Fernando finished this ticket yesterday. We've picked up this one. This is what we're doing now. And, that API is now ready, so you can start working on this ticket that depends on it if anyone wants to pick that up. So genuinely sharing information and synchronizing in a team on tickets that have been broken down to a day or less is very, very useful. And keeping people on that cadence and talking about what we're doing, and then maybe somebody else may say, yeah, John and I finished this ticket. Doesn't make sense for us to pick up the next ticket together because, I'm going to go and help Sue on this other ticket because that's something I can explain about, or, she's an expert on this, so I'd like to learn it, so I'm going to pair with her. For those kind of things, it's incredibly useful. If, as I see too many organizations do, you have tickets that are estimated as 3 weeks long and you have a 2-week sprint, then somebody turning up to the stand-up every day going, I'm still working on ticket 117. Who cares? It's not any useful information to the team. You've just completely missed the whole point of every part of the Agile process. And as you say, it's cargo culting it. We're doing it because it's something that we think we should be doing. I think that if we have this behavior, we'll magically get some outcome that was promised, without understanding all the rest of the behaviors that have to be part of that to get the outcome. So love stand-ups if you have the rest of the process that fits with it. If you don't, I agree they're a waste of time.
Yeah, I mean it is also quite largely dependent on the team as well. I find that if you want to have purely a status meeting, which is exactly what you described that it shouldn't be, then a channel is ideal for that, or even better, just have a proper board.
Yeah.
Have a proper Kanban board that you can just look at whenever you're working on a ticket. You update it, you say what you've done, and then everyone else can follow your progress there. You don't need to every day chat about it. If you and your team feel like they're getting a lot of value out of that daily stand-up, and you feel like every day you're actually like discussing something that concerns all of you, then that's fine. I mean, I don't particularly, just like I don't like people being religious about doing daily stand-ups. I would be very hypocritical if I was religious about about not doing daily stand-ups, So if you're getting value out of them and you feel like, okay, this is actually happening on a daily basis or most days, then that works. But what I see is that many companies that I worked at is not the case at all. Like sometimes, usually what happens sometimes is that you have a lot of people joining a meeting. Sometimes they're not even working on the same thing. They're working on completely different things, and they're all just saying their bit. And I'm thinking, why do I need to join a meeting for this? This is like a status that you could write somewhere. And if you write it somewhere, it's much better because I can reference it later and it doesn't get lost in space, right? So
yeah, absolutely.
So that's my whole thing. And I'm not talking just about daily stand-up. Any sort of meeting that is ritualistic and is pointless, I think it hurts flow state, which is what we were talking about, and it costs money. It literally costs a lot of money to the company. But yeah, good meetings are electrifying in a way because you have a bunch of people that are like-minded talking about a problem, and then you know what you have to do later, and you get more motivated. Then yes, if those are the kind of meetings that you're having, then they're fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, I think, it's, it feels so much more frustrating to me a lot of the time because it's not like we don't know how to have good meetings. There was a lot of very basic meeting hygiene with have an agenda, have somebody that chairs it, ensure that people get a chance to speak. If you have nothing valuable to add to the meeting, just don't go, decline the invite.
The thing about
Like the minutes, and have clear actions and have the actions owned by somebody. They're all basics. They're not secrets. They're written in just about every book you can pick up on meetings.
Yep.
Yet we still don't do them in 90% of meetings.
I was reading a lot about Scrum, especially like kind of like midway through my career, because they put me into a Scrum team and I wasn't too happy how it was run. So I was like, I was trying to understand what was this all about and why was it done in this way. And apparently, it's quite funny because Scrum it's kind of like a methodology that was kind of like taken over by management because they understood it better. So they kind of like imposed it on engineering teams. And when you do that, it's kind of like the opposite of Agile, right? You have a management team that is not really technical or is not a developer or whatever, and then you're imposing some sort of method on teams, and that became like the popular standard. Whereas you have something like XP, which was designed by someone who actually knows what they're doing in terms of like, programming. I think you mentioned it just earlier in this call, but I think XP probably has a lot more in there of value for teams to organize themselves, right? It may not work for everyone, but I think it has a lot of value there. And that didn't become so popular because it's probably very misunderstood by management teams and even other developers and such. And it's a bit sad. I need to read more into Shape Up, as I heard is quite good as well, but I haven't gone into it very much.
Yeah, I haven't either. I've heard a few people like it.
Yeah.
I feel that Scrum is quite misunderstood and misrepresented. Or maybe I've misunderstood it, but when I first read about Scrum, I thought, hey, there's some really good things here. We have this iteration and we're building a feedback loop. So we've got the daily feedback loop from the stand up, so we can course correct on a daily basis. We estimated this task was going to take a day. We didn't finish it yesterday. What were the blockers? What are the obstructions? How can the Scrum Master go and get some help or something that can remove that block, or how can somebody else in the team? So we've got that feedback loop. Then within that, we've got the sprint or an iteration. We've got that feedback loop of we're good at estimating, we're bad at estimating, we're estimating without the right information. We've got a chance to course correct there in the retro, or we have this friction in our workspace, we can correct and fix that. I think those are really great things. And I think that a lot of the Scrum certification, a lot of it being imposed or people feeling they have to run Scrum as per the manual, misses out the huge benefit of those feedback loops. Partly the fact that we have retrospectives that have degenerated into let's play a retrospective game rather than let's figure out what works, what doesn't, and how do we correct it. So I feel that there were some good bits in Scrum that have got lost, unfortunately.
Well, I
And
mean,
those
yeah.
feedback loops are always useful.
I mean, there is good things in anything, right? I mean, I think I'd say that perhaps the best approach to organizing your teams in the best, most optimal way is a bit use the Bruce Lee methodology. Be water, my friend. So you learn a bunch of methodologies and you apply whatever is best for your team based on your requirements, right? So you don't particularly have to be religious in any particular methodology, but you can learn a few of them and apply what works best for you at any particular time.
Yeah, I'm 100% on board with that because every single team is different. The environment you're working in, the tasks you've got are very different. If you're building some massively complex system in Greenfield, that's very different to you're keeping the lights on an existing system that's been around 20 years and maybe you're updating it for new legislation or something, to very different to, say, you're building a compiler
Yep,
versus you're building a massive distributed system.
absolutely.
The kind of tasks you've got, the ways of working are going to be quite different. And then within that, you've got your team breakup. You might have a team that for 3 or 4 years consists of entirely very senior people. And then those senior people move on for a variety of reasons, either within the company or outside the company. So your team makeup changes, and maybe you've got a bunch of junior people that you hire because you're taking the opportunity to rebalance the team a little bit as you backfill people. All of those things are points where your team changes. So you should be looking to look at the state of the team and renormalize that team and say, well, how do we want to work? What's working well for us? What needs to change as these things change? So yeah, I think it's important and often forgotten that every single team is different, and the same team can change over time. Because it's the same team, but the people within it might change, or even then, people grow, people develop. People that have been on the team for 5 or 6 years might have been a junior when they joined. They might be staff now. Their experience, their knowledge, their perspective on things have changed. So we should probably always, again, having that retrospective, having that feedback loop, and continually looking at how do we renormalize what's right for the team now with what we learn, with what we know now. And those outside inputs can be great. And another good reason occasionally to, if you're a manager, move people out of the team, find them a different role in the organization, and bring some fresh blood into your team, even if You move people out and bring people in fresh on a temporary assignment and do maybe a swap between teams of different people. Bringing those different perspectives in can be incredibly useful and bring that different diversity of thought. Have you tried that at all anywhere?
Maybe once or twice in all the places that I worked. It's not something that I've experienced quite enough to have much of an opinion on it.
Yeah. It's not something I've seen an awful lot of, but I did do a contract for the UK Met Office a few years ago. One of the things I noticed there is quite often they have opportunities for engineers to go and work in a different part of the government for 6 months and then return back after their short placement there. And I thought that was a great way of cross-pollinating ideas, exposing people to a different part of the government organisations and a different way of working, and exposing those organisations to a different part of the government organisations were working. And I think that was brilliant. I think more organisations should be looking to do that and then share that knowledge.
But don't you think, like, I mean, I suppose I could say that doing consulting, I tend to work in different streams and stuff, and it changes a bit. But I think within the same organization, there are quite common ways of working. It's not. I don't think that the change tends to be as dramatic as going from one company to another. But I suppose the companies that you're describing are very, very large. So of course they would be quite
Yes, in
different.
that case.
Yeah, I work
In,
mostly in smaller companies, except for the times that I was consulting for larger companies. But
no, I think you're right. So the example of the Met Office, they were switching between entire government departments that are separate organisations, separate balance sheets,
yeah,
separate budgets. So you're getting exposure to how a completely separate organisation works. However, to your point of within a company, I have seen that mixed. I have seen, and again, it's very huge from what the company was. So there are some companies that are very, very, very similar because everyone in the company is working on roughly the same thing. There are other companies where I've been where there's been a mixture of people who are working on low-level embedded software and people working on desktop software and people working on web-based software. So you've had 3 very different deliverables and focuses and platforms that they've been working on. So that has been a great opportunity for being exposed to different ways of working and the different challenges that people are facing. One of those organizations also included a high-performance compute platform. So you had everything from low-level embedded devices, very, very resource-constrained, to high-performance compute with thousands of CPUs and terabytes of memory, to mobile phone systems and a desktop system and a web-based system. So that one was great in that you could be exposed to different teams that were very, very different in the structure and a lot of opportunity to share knowledge there. Cool.
I agree.
So any final thoughts on what we can do to improve DevEx within an organization then?
I think that the main thing that an organization needs to do is start thinking of it in this way. So start thinking of how can I optimize for flow state for developers, and then start thinking of all the things that you can do in order to make that happen. Once you start thinking around that, then all of the ideas, will come to you as the things that you can do. It's a bit like that story about I don't know. I think it was this British cyclist or something. Right? Everything that they started doing was just to like save seconds. Like what would make them faster? What would make them faster? What would reduce the amount of seconds that it takes them to finish the laps or whatever it was. So I think once they started thinking about that and they started optimizing for that, they actually started they won the race, right? So I think optimizing for flow state, when you have like the right focus, then you will start optimizing for the right things. You will start thinking of them as rather than just having like a random sort of approach. Like I think sometimes companies, they get into developer experience and they're like, oh, we just need to make developers feel better. But ultimately, what does that mean? Like you give them what? Like you give them back rubs while they're on the chair. That really is not going to improve the flow state of what they're doing, right? There's many ways that you can make someone feel better, but it also has to benefit the company and benefit the team and improve the quality of your output.
So apart from backrubs, is there anything else you think they should avoid?
I worked in companies that give you benefits that are pointless in terms of like helping your bottom line flow state. For example, there's a very common benefit in the UK. They give you vouchers for stuff, like just vouchers. Like I think it's called group. No, it's not Groupon. It's something else. You just get vouchers for discounts. You go to this website, you buy this voucher, and then you get a discount on things. I feel like that's a benefit that doesn't really improve flow state, and it's not like really that valuable for the employee. There was another benefit that was like, give a loan to someone to buy a bicycle that was kind of tax free. Is like, I'm like, okay, it's kind of cool, but this is really a benefit that kind of like helps your employee. It's a bit of a fluffy benefit. So any sort of fluffy benefit like that, you can probably discard.
Yeah, that's
And
fair
then, of
enough.
course, the obvious things, anything that goes against that. So,
All right, cool. Thank you, Fernando. So if people want to get in touch and talk to you any more about DevEx, where's the best place for them to find you?
in LinkedIn, that's where I'm most active in social media.
All right, awesome. We'll put a link to your profile in the show notes and the
Awesome.
description on YouTube. Thanks very much for your time, Fernando.
Thank you. Thank you very much.